Good morning and welcome to the daily check-in for today, Wednesday, March 31st. Spring has definitely arrived. It's a little chilly today, but we can see flowers beginning to bloom and things are getting greener. And spring has arrived. We know this not just because of the weather outside, but because of the festival of Passover. We're in the midst of Passover right now. As much as Passover is a festival commemorating the Israelites' exodus from Egypt, that great miracle that God did for us, and the Pesach, the everything that it represents spiritually. It also is a festival of spring and is marked by symbols of greenery and an egg of rebirth and so forth. So it's like all of our festivals, has these multiple layers of meaning. One of the things that goes along with the festival of Passover is the chanting of Shir HaShirim, of Song of Songs. Now, it traditionally would be done in the intermediate Shabbat. That's a little complicated this year because there isn't really an intermediate Shabbat, but Shabbat this coming Saturday would actually be the seventh festival day of Passover as well. But on that Shabbat, on this intermediate Shabbat, it's traditional to chant the Song of Songs. Now, there are some pretty obvious connections of why certain scrolls would be associated with particular holidays. And with Passover and Song of Songs, it's a little bit less clear. Certainly, it could be because of the spring. There's beautiful imagery of spring within the love poetry of Song of Songs. And the traditional allegory of the love poetry of Song of Songs is that it's not necessarily just about a love between two people, but between God and Israel, and that certainly seems appropriate as we mark this time of God's redemption of the Jewish people. So that makes sense as well. But a third possibility is that this beautiful love poetry, which is very clearly, literally about the love between two lovers, that kind of human love, human relationship, maybe even though God isn't explicitly mentioned in the text of Shir HaShirim, maybe that's the greatest example of the existence of God, and in our devotion to God is through our own relationships with one another. And certainly that seems appropriate at this time as well. But whatever the exact reason, it's this beautiful text. And we often have beautiful settings of it. I sang you a lovely song by Nira Chen a few days ago, and I want to sing for you a different setting today. Now, this setting is not a composed setting exactly, but is actually the traditional Eastern European chant for Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs. The Masoretes were a group of people between the 6th and 10th century, and they created what is known the Masoretic text of our Bible. Now, the Masoretic text is the oldest full, complete version we have of our sacred texts, and not only does it include all of the letters, but they actually looked into it in a very scholarly way. They looked at strange spellings, they corrected strange spellings, but they also created two systems that are very important. They created the system of vowels that we now know, those dots and dashes and things that help us to pronounce the words correctly, because they wanted to make sure that we were transmitting orally the correct words of Torah. So they created that vowel system, and they also created the cantillation system, the trope that we use to actually chant our sacred texts instead of just simply reading. Now, trope we often think of as an old system of musical notation, and it kind of is and kind of isn't. It actually serves three purposes. One, it helps us to see the actual correct accent of the word. So not just the vowels, but which syllable gets the stress of the word. So we say things like Shir HaShirim and not Shir HaShirim. It also is really a complicated system of punctuation, so it helps us to really be expressive in saying the text and make sure that we're pausing at the right moments and gaining what the Masoretes really did for us in interpreting the text and deciding where sentences would end and where new sentences would begin, and that really changes the meaning as well. And finally, it is, in fact, kind of a system of musical notation. Now, the trope themselves, whether it's in Song of Songs or whether it's Torah or Haftarah or whatever it may be, it's the same system, the exact same system. It's got these phrases, usually one trope mark per word, that create these musical and expressive phrases. In the Eastern European tradition, different scrolls, different texts have a different musical realization of those symbols. So if I were to sing in Torah trope, Mercha tipcha munach anachta, Mercha tipcha, Mercha sof pasuk. That's regular Torah trope in the Eastern European tradition. There are lots of other traditions that realize these symbols in different ways, different Sephardic traditions, a Western European tradition, all sorts. There's nothing precise like a musical notation that says a certain symbol equals a certain note or a certain rhythm. So that was regular Torah trope. If I were to sing that in Haftarah trope, the exact same symbols, I'd get Mercha tipcha munach et nachta, Mercha tipcha munach, Mercha sof pasuk. So you can hear how different and how lyrical and how the quality of the words of the prophets in the Haftarah might be affected by that melodic example compared to the more prosaic Torah text. Song of Songs is, again, a different sound, and it's really beautiful and reflects the kind of pastoral and, I think, love poetry that you find in Shir HaShirim. And so that same trope phrase in Song of Songs would be Mercha tipcha munach et nachta, Mercha tipcha Mercha sof pasuk. It's really lovely, and so I'll just chant for you a pretty well-known passage from Song of Songs that is perhaps particularly appropriate for Passover because it's not just love poetry, but also speaks of spring. I will read you the English first so you know what it is all about. My beloved spoke thus to me, Arise, my darling, my fair one, come away. For now the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. The blossoms have appeared in the land, the time of pruning has come, the song of the turtle dove is heard in our land. So that's our beautiful poem for Passover, and here we have it sung in Hebrew with the Shir HaShirim trope. Anadodi ve'amar li Kumi lach Rayati afati ulchilach Ki hine hastav avar hageshem halach lo hanitzanim nir'u va'aretz etz hazamir higia ve'kol hator nishma be'artzenu. Happy Passover, happy spring.